For the first time ever in history, an intercontinental ballistic missile, possibly an intermediate range ballistic missile, was utilized in combat in a demonstration of capability as a signal to NATO that Russia is now doing real-world testing of its nuclear weapons, signifying that they could in fact put down 30 multiple independent re-entry vehicle warheads on top of their targets inside Ukraine. This would have triggered NATO's early warning systems. But you wouldn't know that if you went on CNN, where all they're talking about is Matt Gaetz and his sexual allegations. My friends, if shit hit the fan were to happen today, we would be the last to know. And this is proof positive of that. Understand what just happened. Russia just sent an ICBM, possibly an IRBM, but that's besides the point. This would have triggered NATO's early warning nuclear detection systems, okay? So NATO knew potentially a nuclear weapon was inbound, and they did not notify the population that this was going down. This, of course, comes after the UK just fired more Storm Shadow missiles into Russia, confirmed by the Russian MOD. Multiple instances of ATACMS, Storm Shadows, attacking inside Russia as Ukraine invades Kursk. We're currently in a situation where there is no red line, nuclear hotline into Washington between Moscow and Washington. There is no Russian ambassador currently in Washington. There's been a new nuclear doctrine recently ratified by Vladimir Putin. We are closer to nuclear war than ever before, and they're not telling you anything in the mainstream media. If that's not proof positive that you 100% will be on your own when it goes down, I don't know what is. The strike using the IRBM, or the intermediate range ballistic missile, possibly an ICBM, the jury is still out. Either way, these things were traveling fast, likely north of 20,000 kilometers per hour. They used multiple independent re-entry vehicles, all of which could have been nuclear tipped. This could have been a massive payload carrying several megatons of nuclear material onto target. And this was a demonstration, the first time ever used in combat, signifying that if Russia wanted to, they could put this missile right on target. Because, of course, this did hit apparently right on target. All of these independent re-entry vehicles seem to hit within the same general proximity. Where did they hit? The strike struck the Yuzmash defense plant in Dnipropetrovsk. This is an industrial production facility that is underground, a Soviet-era industrial production facility, allegedly, according to the Russians, that is. And they also may have beneath that facility a command and control and underground communications facility. So why did the Russians do this? Obviously, this is to send a message to NATO that we are literally as close as we could possibly be to using a real nuke. They've now, for the first time ever, you know those big ICBMs on the mobile platforms, the ones that we just told you about yesterday? They used that for the first time in history, only it didn't have a nuke on it. So this was a test, and NATO said nothing. In fact, Ukraine told its people nothing. You know how I've been saying for years that before the Ukraine invasion, remember when Zelensky told his people, don't worry, Vladimir Putin's not going to attack. And then what did they do after Vladimir attacked? They locked the country down, and if you tried to escape and you were a male, you were thrown into the meat grinder on the front lines. Guys, understand they're not going to tell us when the shit hits the fan, okay? The embassy released that warning yesterday, and this is where this all gets very suspect, because we knew all these embassies had told their citizens to evacuate the embassies yesterday because there could have been an attack, which would in itself been an Article 5 violation, because of course that is sovereign NATO territory on Ukraine territory. So that all of these, there was about a half dozen or so embassies, probably more, that's just what was reported, who vacated their embassies because they thought that a Russian attack was inbound. If that was true, if that actually happened, that would have been a breach of Article 5, and you likely would have seen the invocation of Article 5, I should say. Misspoke. Not a breach of it, but that would have been an attack on sovereign NATO territory, which would have triggered Article 5, which would, of course, potentially ratcheted this thing up even further than where it is today. Now, these independent reentry vehicle warheads, each are 100 kilograms, traveling at 7,000 meters per second. This would have been the equivalent of 2.5 billion joules of energy, about 250 times that of a tank shell. Okay, so this is kinetic energy, rods from God type stuff. I'm not sure if it was tungsten. It probably wasn't. If you don't know what that is, they used to have this theoretical weapon where instead of a nuke, they would try to throw tungsten down, which is a very heavy metal, I presume, at the Earth at a very fast speed, kind of like a meteor, and that this in itself, just the kinetic energy alone, no radiation needed, would do significant amounts of damage and would be able to penetrate deep into the Earth, kind of like a bunker buster, okay? So that they're now using these, it signifies either the Russians are really running out of weapons and they're saying, hey, maybe we should use some of these ICBMs we have kicking around. It's already money spent, and they have the capability to deliver a very large payload, or this is a sign that they're sending the final signals to NATO. So if we continue hereafter to see attacks by the UK and the Americans into Russia, you know our leaders are completely insane and they're calling Putin's bluff. They're calling Putin's bluff. Now, as I indicated, NATO scrambled fighter jets after this. The on-duty F-16 pairs were scrambled at Polish air bases, and the ground-based defense and radar reconnaissance systems hit their highest state of readiness, according to Polish Armed Forces Operational Command. Okay? So just so you know, this was an RS-26 Frontier missile. As we discussed yesterday, I really was very skeptical of that story when I reported it. And if you watched my video yesterday, I was saying I don't really understand the logic behind utilizing one of these missiles with a conventional payload because they're just way too expensive. But then when you think about it, a lot of these nuclear deployment systems, the money's already been invested. It's already been spent. So there's two benefits to doing that, and that you can test out to prove that it works, and then you can also use something that, you know, you've already spent the money. So I tell you, man, this is insane, and it happened multiple times. They're saying that another one of these actually malfunctioned over central Ukraine. I don't know if that's true or not, but we do know that there was more than one ICBM that was fired. This is absolutely crazy. We are so close. So close. And even if we do come back from the brink, understand that every single time one of these things happen, we just get closer and closer. So I wouldn't be surprised if we don't retrace from this to some degree. Let's hope we do, because honestly, I was, dialing up contacts and people are getting ready to bug out, legit getting ready to bug out. It was to the point where today I'm thinking about, when do I make the kids stay home from school? Honestly, because this is getting absolutely crazy. The first ever test of a strategic nuclear system demonstrated in human history, triggering early warning systems, and NATO did not inform its citizens. They're not going to tell us. They're not going to tell us. The Russian MOD did confirm that British-made long-range missiles were shot down. Of course, they didn't confirm the ones that were in Kursk, because neither side ever admits its losses. They only maximize their wins. The Russian MOD ministry has not specified exactly where the Storm Shadow missiles were intercepted. Russian air defenses have intercepted 2 UK-produced Storm Shadow missiles over Ukraine in the last 24 hours. Okay? Now, this was kind of suspicious as well. During a live briefing, Maria Zakharova was informed by phone. She was the foreign ministry spokeswoman. And this is something I've never seen. This is just not something you see. She was doing a press conference and she answered her phone. And I guess you could hear on the microphone, I didn't have the exact translation, but the voice on the phone said, "We do not comment on the ballistic missile attack on Misc, which Western media has started talking about." So clearly this is sending a signal as well of the severity of the situation. This was purely theatrical. There is no reason why the Russian MOD would broadcast, or the foreign ministry would broadcast this, what they made out to be an impromptu situation. It clearly was not, okay? Now, Zaluzhny, the former commander of the Ukrainian armed forces, who is now in UK, he says that, "I believe that in 2024, we can absolutely, definitely consider that the Third World War has begun. Because in 2024, Ukraine is no longer facing Russia. In front of Ukrainian soldiers from North Korea, Iranian shaheeds, they're killing civilians in Ukraine quite openly without any shyness, and Chinese shells and drones are detonated in Ukraine. Chinese parts are being used in Russian missiles." And to add to that, the UK military chief said the following: "UK troops would be ready to fight Russia tonight if needed. UK forces are ready to face Russia tonight," said Rob McGowan, the deputy chief of the British Defence Staff, as an MP asked him how many British brigades could get to NATO's eastern flank in the event of a major escalation with Russia. I mean, they'd just be destroyed by nukes, but I guess really all of this is just the Schengen strategy is to try to get things on lockdown after the nukes fall. At least that's my theory. "If the British Army was asked to fight tonight, it would fight tonight," he replied. "I don't think anybody in this room should be under any illusion that if the Russians invaded Eastern Europe tonight, then we would meet them in that fight." With what? Here's what the U.S. response was, okay? "The U.S. military is ready to use nuclear weapons if necessary, but only under the conditions deemed acceptable to U.S. interests," says Rear Admiral Thomas Buchanan of the U.S. Strategic Command, aka STRATCOM. Buchanan emphasized that the U.S. would act in a way that maintains its position as a world leader and ensures its interests are protected in any potential nuclear exchange. In a nuclear exchange, the U.S. would retain part of its nuclear arsenal for deterrence, ensuring it has enough capacity to prevent further threats. The U.S. seeks to avoid any environment involving nuclear strikes, aiming to prevent such a scenario from occurring, with the exception of provoking the country that has the most nuclear weapons in the world. Buchanan stressed the importance of ongoing dialogue with Russia, China, and North Korea, blah, 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 to minimize the risk of nuclear conflict. Russia's updated nuclear doctrine, signed by President Putin, allows for nuclear strikes if Russia and Belarus is attacked by conventional weapons that pose a critical threat, i.e. Storm Shadow and ATACMS missiles. The Russian doctrine could lead the U.S. and other Western nations to reconsider their military support for Ukraine. Apparently not, because they are still firing those even after these ICBMs fell. Currently, there is a British RAF Poseidon gathering intelligence around Kaliningrad in Belarus. While this is quite commonplace, of course, in light of the events of today, it is quite concerning. And the International Criminal Court has finally issued an arrest warrant, long anticipated, for Netanyahu and Gallant. Several European countries have said that they would be arrested if they travel to those countries. So this is major, because what this now compels Netanyahu to do is escalate the conflict quicker. A senior Israeli official also commented on Iran's nuclear facilities, that Iran has never been more vulnerable to attack, signaling that this thing is about to go global. Has that stopped the Bit Bros from spending all their money on Bitcoin? Do yourself a favor. Cash in one of those Bitcoins today. Go and buy some jerry cans, fill them up with gasoline and diesel. Buy yourself a generator. Hell, if you own a Bitcoin, go buy yourself a diesel generator. They're a bit more expensive, but they're far more efficient. Go and stock up on ammunition, buy some guns, buy lots of food, just buy lots of shit and put it in a shipping container somewhere. Okay? Do that for yourself. If you own Bitcoin and you don't have a shipping container full of preps, wow. We're here. We're here. And look around. Crickets. Keep prepping. Talk to you soon.